and welcome back to Call Your Coven Practical Advice for Nonsensical Times. My name is Bea, my pronouns are she, they, and I am your resident numerologist. But today I'm so excited to not be the one delivering all the information and also to chat with my dear friend, Dr. Kate Henry.
Aw,
I gotta
that's
give
really
you the full
sweet.
title. Yeah. Well, you are a professional writer, a speaker, and a productivity coach, and much, much more. And we will get into all of that. But first and foremost, today, you're a Phoebe Bridgers fan.
I am such a Phoebe Bridgers fan, so I have been going hard following all of Phoebe Bridgers. If folks don't know, if you don't know, do you know about the
I
Phoebe Bridgers?
know.
Okay, of course you do. But like for folks who don't know, Phoebe Bridgers hasn't like put out music in years, and recently did these like tours across. I'm sure everyone who's listening actually knows Phoebe Bridgers as I say this because you're all cool and have good taste in music. But she's been doing these little like pop up tours, and then she just did a big one at Madison Square Garden, and then she announced this new tour. And I have just been like refreshing Instagram. My Instagram algorithm, which was all heated rivalry, is now Phoebe Bridgers. And today she announced the tour. So I just was like, I clocked probably 2 hours today on Instagram, just like Phoebe Bridgersing and like signing up to be on the wait list to maybe get tickets and like yeah, texting my friends about her, and I've been Phoebe Bridgers today. It's been
Yeah.
my day.
Yeah. Well, and I thought this was a great place to start because when you said that to me, I was like, oh, we're going to talk about goal setting. I haven't even told anybody what we're talking about. We're talking about goal setting. We're talking about the intersection of like productivity and witchcraft and spiritual practice and much, much more. But when you told me that you had spent all this time on Phoebe Bridgers today and getting tickets and hiring, Kate said the funniest thing about hiring 10 interns to just wait in the lines, the virtual lines for tickets for her. And I was like, yes, okay. I had all these plans. I have all these goals. I have all these things that I need to get done in my life, in many facets of my life. And instead, yesterday, I spent, if you spent two, I probably spent double that trying to get tickets to Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey that I didn't even know was going on sale yesterday. I do want to see this movie, but it just became a fight between me and the AMC app. And I was like, I'm determined. I didn't. I didn't win the war. We don't have tickets. I wasted like 5 hours yesterday on this.
Wow. I'm making this face because I'm like, wait, aren't they still deciding who they want to, or has this film already been made? In my mind, I was like, oh, I just saw a thing today on Instagram about Robert Pattinson being like, let me read the script before I sign on for it. So wait, is it?
He must have read the script and signed on because it comes out next month,
Oh my
July
God,
17th.
I thought they were. I was like, well, this movie will probably be out in 4 or 5 years. So, okay,
Yeah.
so you didn't get tickets
I didn't. A
for.
friend said, oh my gosh, it's been a mad rush to the Odyssey tickets, which I was like, okay, Homer, go off in 2026, still riling everybody up. But like, I then was like, okay, let me check it out. And then my app made me wait for over an hour to even get into the app. And then, yeah, I guess nobody was prepared for how much the gender neutral girlies were going to really
Yeah.
want to see the Odyssey. It crashed AMC, it crashed Fandango, and it crashed my nervous system.
Oh my gosh, it's gonna be so good though.
Absolutely. Well, I want to dive right in. I want to know all about you and what drew you to this work, but also what does productivity mean in 2026? Like, how do we even approach this topic?
Sure, I'll start with me because that brings us into like my approach to productivity. So I am Dr. Kate, which means I have my PhD, and I was like a lifelong academic. So like starting when I was a little kid was like I'm going to be a writer, and then I was like I'm going to be a professor, and I did everything to become a professor. And then when I was finishing my master's degree and working on my PhD, I developed chronic pain and chronic illness and was like, oh, holy shit, am I going to need to drop out? I can't do this anymore. Like the productivity that I was doing with my output was just like so unsustainable. So I had like this existential reflection where I was like, okay, I need to relearn how to be productive because what I'm doing is not working, and I'm just not going to be able to succeed or like even have a good quality of life as an academic. And while I was learning how to, or relearning, I guess, how to be productive in a way that didn't involve just sitting for 12 hours, I decided that I wanted to make a blog about it, which helped with accountability for doing it. So I spent 2 years researching and trying out and blogging about productivity tools. And I, through doing that, found I was really drawn to like things that were influenced by slow living and accessibility and how we could make productivity more, I guess, accessible and comfortable for folks who wanted to stay in academia, or just knowledge workers in general. And I ultimately decided I didn't want to stay in academia. And after I graduated, I started a job as a productivity coach. So productivity, to me, it means just accomplishing the things you want to accomplish. And that sounds like maybe a little wishy-washy answer, but therein lies like, what do you want to accomplish? Are you trying to accomplish more than you truly need to? How do you feel about these things? Like, are you trying to accomplish these particular goals or tasks because you think you should? Like, how, if you have to complete them in order to like make a living, complete your job, finish grad school, like how can we do this in a way that's good enough that you can still take care of your body? So I'm like thinking about like how we can really personalize productivity practices, because as a productivity researcher, there's really like a one size fits all approach, a really like, if you do this, then you'll find success. And it's just like truly not accessible. And when we compare ourselves to this, like, I don't know, thing that helps people to sell productivity books to say that everyone can do it, like, we're going to feel terrible. And yeah, so which is what I did to get me to the point where I like burnt out and was chronically ill and couldn't do what I needed to do. I'm really interested in productivity. I think it's fascinating to research and like help people with and write about, but certainly in a way that kind of like pushes back and blows up the idea that like there's one right way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is perfect timing to be having this conversation for me. We just covered in one of my therapy classes narrative therapy, and narrative, the number one thing is like there is no one true story. That's just not a thing that we should be living by anymore. And so I love that your work not only pushes back against that in a collective way of saying, every single client you see, this is where we're starting from. Like there is no one way to be productive. But also you are really focused on people who are experiencing transitions and changes to their own productivity and capacity and like energy levels. And I think that's such a tender place too. I mean, you want to start talking about just the question, what do you want to get done? You know, what do you want to accomplish? I don't know, it's such vulnerable like work. It's so tender in there. And I don't usually think about the soft underbelly of productivity very much.
Yeah, I think not a lot of people do. Like I say, all of my clients know I am not a trained uh like psychologist at all. And also it is a space where it's like you may cry. You may feel feelings. Like even like me as someone who's like very vocal about my own journey with chronic health stuff, like folks may feel very like witnessed and validated. And I think there's a sense like many, not all, but many of my clients do identify as having some kind of chronic health experience. And like I know if I were looking for a productivity coach, I would also want to work with someone who could like get it and hold the space and mirror back to me in a way that was felt validating, like they got it. So I think like that, like the tender underbelly, it's also nice working with folks who are also chronically ill, because we're like, yeah, we already get that. Like you don't need to convince me that you're tired. You don't need to convince me that you like you know, it's difficult to do this thing. Like I'm already coming in with the idea of like, how can we make this so that you can like be as like, while I do have critiques of efficiency, like I want my clients and my friends and myself to like, and the listeners to be like efficient so you can then rest and take care of yourself. Like I like to think of it as like hacking productivity.
Yeah. Okay, tell me more about these hot takes on efficiency.
Okay, so when I teach about personalizing our productivity practice and just like introducing this idea to folks, I like to share like covers of best-selling productivity books, not to like, you know, critique them or be like they're bad or whatever. Like I get some good stuff out of them, but just to even, so my PhD's in rhetoric, and so like I am like interested like how language and discourse is used to like imply something or to like just a few words can make us feel something. So when productivity books make a promise to us that we will like be able to focus incredibly easily, or we will like just make small changes and then have big results, or like just like a promise of something that will improve our life, often I see that the focus there is like time management, prioritization, goal setting, focus, and like the Venn diagram overlap of all of them is efficiency. So efficiency is like getting the most done with the littlest input, whether that's time or energy or focus. And it sounds great, but like efficiency for someone who has 10 interns to do something to get them their tickets, right? That's going to look very different than someone who does not. Or like efficiency for someone who is a working parent is going to look different than someone who has, you know, who does not have children, for example, and doesn't have the additional tax on their time and energy. So like efficiency sounds lovely, but we're not all going to be able to access like doing things like incredibly quickly. Like neurodiversity is going to affect this, and you know, not just even like chronic pain, but just like material differences in our lived experience. So I'm like, yes, let's do efficiency, but like let's also be critical of comparing our efficiency, quote unquote, to
Yeah.
what someone else can do, because it's just not going to look different. And like my efficiency as a someone who has literally been researching productivity for 8 years is like sky high, because I have like this like mind palace of tools that I can use, right? But like I would never expect someone who has not already practiced and tried things out and hacked it for themselves to like have the same experience. So I am critical of efficiency, but I'm interested in effectiveness
Yeah.
as like
Mm.
another goal we can go towards. So I'm curious, like,
Hmm.
what's coming to your mind from your world thinking about efficiency and effectiveness?
Okay, well, if by your world, you mean the internet in the last 20 years. Um, I can't stop thinking about how people are like, oh, you have the same 24 hours in a day as Beyonce. And you're like, when you think about it, you're like, actually, we don't. We just, there's no way that we have the same 24 hours in the day. And that doesn't even have to do with material wealth or resources. Like, I'm sure she has many more interns than just 10. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it just who Beyonce is not who I am, is not who you are, is not who anybody else is. And so, what bringing it back to the psych world, it's incredibly important. It's like the first thing that you're taught in school, that when you are doing your initial assessment of any client, you have to look at it through a biopsycho social lens. And then social is a huge other umbrella of spiritual, economic, blah, blah, blah. So there's all of these intersections of identity and current circumstance and life experience, you know, that anybody brings to the therapy room or to your room, like if you were assessing a client for coaching. And so, yeah, you really have to take each person as they come and say, what do all these things mean for you? And I love that you're talking about personal hacks, because I also feel like life hacks is something that has been trendy over the last decade as well. And even that is like, okay, yeah, maybe that hack works for a number of people, but maybe it's not available to somebody else for whatever reason. So just holding the whole of like, yeah, we have these collective experiences and we need to be able to have conversation in shared language. And also, all of those words break down at some point and don't fit anymore. So, yeah, that's just what I'm thinking of. I'm like, everyone's a snowflake over here.
Yes, they are. It's lovely. This too, like I think I mentioned before, like efficiency, and we're thinking about like everyone's, what was it, biosocial.
Yeah, biopsychosocial.
Yeah. So like the like context of one person, right? Like thinking about that, like it also makes me think too around like, so I said effectiveness is the thing I'm curious. And like, so we know the term effective. It's like we're like doing things to the quality that we would like to do. And it's up to you or me or whoever, like individuals, to determine what that actually looks like for you. So like effectiveness for me with my work means that I can prioritize taking care of my body, and like I have time to show up for my friends and my spouse, and I, you know, like don't overwork myself. Like effectiveness looks like that, and it looks different for everyone. And I also think with productivity, like productivity culture and like white supremacist culture are like so intertwined. And I'm thinking about this from like Tema Okun's work, like around white supremacy culture, like these tenets or characteristics of it that are woven into productivity culture as well. So like just simply like a few, like perfectionism, an obsession with urgency, like that is huge, and like individualism, like competition. And I work with mainly academics, not only, but generally academics, folks who are like, I have to finish my PhD. I'm going to run out of funding if I don't finish this. I have to get tenure. I'm going to lose my job if I don't get tenure. So there's like this, of course there's a sense of urgency. And of course there's like a sense of like individualism or perfection or competition that folks feel when they're literally feeling like my material security will not be there. So like I have a lot, like I don't work in academia. Like maybe I would go adjunct, really fun, like a class about heated rivalry or something, but otherwise I'm like really have a lot of critiques about academia culture, in that because my expertise is helping people finish projects on a limited timeline. Like it really is like the system of that is like feels truly inaccessible and like almost harmful in some ways. And especially if like you need more time, or your energy is limited, or you're a working parent or things like this. Like it's to even if you want to push back and say, no, I will not participate in this sense of urgency. I will not participate in, you know, sacrificing my physical or mental or, you know, psychological health to do this. Like you're still swimming in a system that where it's that pushback might not be accepted well. So like I feel like this is a business owner. It's just me and my assistant. And I'm like, okay, these are the tenets of like, what does it look like to not practice urgency? You know, like what does it look like to try not to do like be perfectionistic in the work that I do? It's taken work to try to walk that talk and hold myself accountable to that. Yeah, I don't want to go on too much of a tangent about that, but I get really fired up when I think about this, because like I see folks needing to publish like 15 articles to get tenure, and it seems so stupid and arbitrary when other places people need to publish like 5. Anyways, so
Yeah.
academia can be fun. I don't know. If they like it, I want them to do it. It like for me, I think I get too like whatever part of my chart it is, I get too fired up and I'm like, this is not accessible. Is it the Libra? Is it the Venus Scorpio? Like something is like, no, I won't participate.
Hey, that's fair. That's really fair. And I think that that's not just academia. Like, I think many industries have this version of the story, you know, it's not their version of the story, and the things that are arbitrary and the loopholes that you have to jump through and the ways in which the system even like when you were saying, the system might not like the pushback, even if there's not external systemic tension, then there's internal systemic tension. There's like an internalized productivity that even if you're choosing what's right for you, you're probably going to have to deal with chatter that's saying you shouldn't be doing this, or this is really selfish to do this instead of that, or whatever. Now I'm thinking of the trend of putting on your email signature, like, I don't, some version of like, I don't have subscribe to urgency culture, so you might hear from me anytime between 5 to 7 business days or something like that. Just thinking about how the little actions that people are taking to make these kinds of changes across industries.
I think it's good when folks can model it. Like, I think if I were a professor right now, like I haven't taught college in like since I graduated 6 years ago, but like that's something I would definitely be bringing into with my students and like modeling. And like it would be work, but it would be, I think, valid work to do,
Yeah.
to try to, you know model what this could look like if it's in terms of extra deadlines or space or this or that or grading or whatever. But yeah, I think that thinking about what could be effective and like how that could support you as a like holistically, like I think that is a something that can be a nice experiment to try. I'll just say that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, following this thread, before we get to the intersection of spirituality and witchcraft, I think a really interesting bridge might be creativity. And I know that we have a lot of folks in the Coven that are artists and are creatives. And so thinking about effectiveness and like shifting towards effectiveness, what's like top of mind for you when thinking about artists starting to make that shift? Like, what's the easiest kind of first thing to do?
Mm. I'm thinking about like to be effective, you first need to know, well, what am I trying to do? Like, how do I want to apply this lens, this measure of like what would count as effective to what? So, like, let's
Mm,
say that there is a particular goal that you have. I like to think about goal setting as something we can make both actionable and achievable. So, an actionable goal, it's a goal that we know what the end result should look like. We know what the steps we need to take are to get there. And from like a productivity approach, that would be okay, like what are the milestones or the chapters that I need to hit? What are the specific tasks within that? So like literally like it's called like decomposing things down into the tasks that are included. And this is helpful like if you go to your studio or your desk or something and you're like, I'm going to write my book. And then at the end of the day, you're like, I haven't achieved my goal. Like I can't really measure the success. So like it could be more actionable to choose a like much more smaller task, which then you could be like, good job, I have achieved it. And then achievability comes in when I'm thinking about looping us back to what we talked about, like the individual experience. When something's achievable, we can complete it with our personal resources. And our personal resources, I'll be curious to hear from the psych world about
mm,
this, but our personal resources in the productivity world, like a lot of folks think of time, energy, and focus. I'm interested as well in like physical experience, mental
mm,
experience, your mood. How does your body feel? Do you have access to furniture that feels
mm,
okay? Like, are you working someplace where they're, like they're doing construction next door for the next month? And like, how do you deal with the sound, right? So, to make a goal achievable, we are thinking about how we approach the specific tasks based on like how much time we have, how much energy we have, how much focus we have, how our body feels. And that achievability kind of comes in, I think, a little bit more like the day to day. Like,
mm,
okay, I've reached my studio. I know that right now I'm working on, like the first draft of my screenplay and what is truly accessible for me right now. I have brain fog, so maybe I'm not going to do this certain task, but I could instead do this other task. Or
mhm.
I have to work from bed today, so I can't have both of my monitors, but I still want to do this, so what can I do with a pen and paper? So I think effectiveness is like knowing what you want to do, breaking it down into a small task that you're doing at the time you think is the right time in the process, and then approaching it by so that you don't have to like force yourself or like self-flagellate or like harm yourself. And not harm yourself, that sounds like there's responsibility on you for harming yourself, so I'll strike that phrase, but instead like choose a task that you can feel that you can actually complete, or that you can play around with or experiment with, that will feel good. So that was a very long answer to the question of like how we might experience effectiveness with creativity, but that I think is applicable as well to writing, or to, I don't know, buying a house, or like any other kind of goal that's going to have tasks that you need to complete in a particular order.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you, first and foremost, for sharing all of that. It's similar from the psych world, honestly, in that like treatment plans have to have goals, and goals have to be SMART, and SMART is an acronym, and it's about having measurable, achievable goals, that just generally make sense for the person and the situation at hand. But there has to be some level of measurability to it. And so now jumping a little ahead, when I think about witchcraft or spirituality, where the goals might not be as tangible, the outcome might not be as certain, and that's a little bit in the psych world as well, right? We're setting these goals, but we don't know really what's going to be quote unquote achievable until we get into the work and kind of go, further down the process. But there has to be some way to check in with this goal along the way that is also going to empower the person to keep going. I think that achievability factor, at least for me, is like when you do the thing and you get the cookie, you're more likely to keep doing the thing to get the cookie, and you have to build confidence. And there's a lot of, coaching or therapy work that goes into encouraging the person, to your client, to keep going. But even just out on a more personal level, like out of any kind of theory, what you're saying actually affirms something that I just did yesterday, which is that I am writing this novel draft, and I hit my word count yesterday, but I did it writing on my phone, sitting on the couch.
Hell yeah.
And I even hit the goal and wanted to keep going because I was in the moment and like really close to finishing a certain section. And I was like, I'm just going to keep going. And there's a version of me that would have said, you have to go in your office, you need to sit down at your computer, you need to do this thing like in this way. And I think the flexibility of, okay, it's not going to look the way that I thought it was going to look. I'm working with the tools that I have available to me at the time, including energy and personal kind of resources. And yeah, it's still like I hit a goal and it was effective and pretty efficient, to be honest. I didn't really have to move. I just got my little phone out. And but yeah, that all makes sense. So I appreciate that answer for sure.
Bravo on hitting your word count. That's exciting. I've been doing the 1,000 Words of Summer from Jamie Attenberg, and
100%.
It was really hard today. Like today I actually, and this is like good to model this too, like today I was like going to go to like 2 different classes I had signed up for, and I was like, I can't. And I didn't go to either one, and instead I had a really slow day. So like the 1,000 words that have taken me a half hour to just quickly write the last 4 days, today probably took like 3 hours, like getting up, coming back, like I got them done. I didn't want to, but I did it in a way that felt more accessible, which was good. And I was like, I was like, if you want to just stop at 500, you can. But I was like, no, let's try, to do it. And so that felt good.
Totally. Yeah, I'm doing it as well. We have, well, you're in a little smut club Discord. We have a thread that some folks are doing it as well. And it's been nice to check in there and just have that accountability and that community for it. And yeah, it's not accountability in that there's no shame if you do not write the 1,000 words. And I too have been like, okay, any words are good words. Let's just, 1,000 is the goal, but I'll be happy with any number of words at this point. Okay, we got to talk about witches. We got to talk about witchcraft because this is where I think this conversation's already so juicy, but I think this is where it
Yeah.
gets really, really juicy. So, yeah, what does an attainable, well, I could start with your practices if there's anything you want to share, but my juicy question is like, what does an attainable goal look like in a spiritual setting?
This was really fun for me to think about. Something that has been helping me with my attainable goals is pulling a tarot card when I've been feeling lost. And I have to look and see what it was because I pulled it recently and I pulled it again, the Nine of Wands. And I know, and I was like, okay, okay. I don't know. I have to look up what things mean. I don't have things memorized, but I was like, oh, this feels appropriate and gives me like a little bit of guidance to be like, okay, I really do need to take a break. Or I need to like,
Yeah.
take this seriously around that. So like that is like in terms of like it's not necessarily an attainable goal, but it influences what I think of as attainable when I pull a tarot card, when I'm feeling like making a decision around something that has to do with work or with like when I'm feeling burnt out. It can kind of be like a like a further permission giving if I'm feeling still a little stuck in it. Like, no, I have to do it. I have to do it. Like, it could be a nice thing to be like, okay, well, the universe is telling me I should
Yes.
bring a little self compassion. Like, if I feel this and I just pulled that card, it must be real, you
Totally.
know? So that is one thing that comes up. And another thing that feels like this is like very productivity, but it also feels very like in terms of any kind of like spell work that I've done over the years or something, but like experimenting, like doing an experiment, which is like in terms of goal setting with productivity, like when we set an experiment to do something, we're like, I'm going to try this and I'm going to like reflect as I go
Hmm.
and see how I may want to shift the course. And like, so I'm thinking here around like Anne-Laure Lecomte's work, who's a neuroscientist, and like she says like the goal of doing an experiment is not to be like I got 100% success. It's rather to get like a greater knowing about ourselves, and then at the end of an experiment to decide if we want to do something different or if we want to
Hmm.
repeat or continue. So it kind of makes me think about like intention setting or spell work or whatever sort of witchcraft practice in terms of like, okay, well, I'm going to put faith in this, or I'm going to like open up to this and
Hmm.
then experience what comes. Like, so that's like my, as I think about the attainability of that, it's not so gripped. It's sort of
Yeah.
like, okay, I've done this and I've like put this out there. Let's see what brews. Let's see what comes. Those are, I have some more examples, but those are two that come to my mind. So I'm curious to hear how that resonates with you or like what's coming to your mind.
Yeah, it is making me think of these progress tools that we use in clinical practice. That's like, and everybody's taken one. If you've gone to a doctor or you've ever had any signs of depression, you've taken that thing that's like, in the last 2 weeks, how many days have you felt hopeless? Like, those kinds of screening tools are actually used in clinical practice to measure progress because if your answer on day one of treatment is that in the last 2 weeks you've experienced that almost every day, and then 3 months into treatment you take the same little profile and you find out that you've gone down to half the days, then maybe again it's not the progress that you wanted to see, but it is progress, and we have to take like small wins and small progress along the way. And so it's making me think about when you're crafting spells, do you have a check in date? Do you have a date 3 months from now, or 6 months from now, or a year from now, or maybe less? Maybe everybody's like 3 months. That's so wild. I need to check in 3 days. Where's my where's my results? But like, do you have a date that you're going to check in with the spell and get an update, like a progress report? And do you have a tool with which you're going to measure progress? because then it's less about an outcome and it's like, has there been any movement?
Mm.
Have you noticed this spell, quote unquote, working in any way, shape, or form? And then you're having to get more flexible, more creative, more observant, more nuanced, and to say, like, yeah, actually, I have noticed X, Y, and Z, and maybe I wouldn't have thought about it before. But, like, how many times do you set an intention or cast a spell or pull a card and just never revisit it?
Yeah. I like this makes me think too around like in the past, I haven't done this in a while because it's a lot of work, but like every month to have like a reflection practice where you answer the
Mm,
same questions and then to be able to track progress over time, or not even progress, just to track experience,
experience.
like to see
Yeah.
what you notice. I'm very interested as a productivity researcher and coach, like how we can use our previous experiences and patterns of behavior to help set proactive goals moving forward so that we're not like falling into the optimism bias of like, oh, of course I can do this thing. I want to do this thing. I'm going to do this thing. But instead, like setting ourselves up for more success because we're basing it in like realistically, like what our behaviors have been instead of
Yeah.
just, so like, not to go on a tangent about that, but like I'm really interested in that as a way to make things accessible. Another thing that comes up for me thinking about like an attainable witchy spiritual goal is batching things for certain days or times of the day or times of the year. Like I think like I send my newsletters on Wednesday. Wednesday I think is ruled by Mercury. I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure. Yeah, so like I like intentionally am like I'm going to do that or like when Mercury is in retrograde, regardless of how you feel about it. But like when Mercury's in retrograde, I'm like, this is a really good time for revision, for anything.
Mhm.
So like I often think about that. Not that I'm not gonna like launch something necessarily, but I'm like really feel more motivated to do that sort of redoing or revisioning or reflection or something during
Mhm.
that time. So I mean, as a numerologist, do you think about how do you think about that in terms of
Yeah,
not
totally.
maybe not productivity? That's kind of maybe I don't know if that's boring. I don't think productivity is boring. I think it's fun. But like, what do you
No,
think?
I don't think it's boring at all. And I think anybody who wants to make something, whether that's craft, whatever craft means to you, I think that, yeah, it's just part of it is tussling with our own productivity and what that means to us. And so, yeah, I think about the practice of returning and reflecting on years that have the same personal number is like, okay, the last time that I was in a personal 6 year, what year was that? What was going on for me personally, like inside the house? What was going on externally? What circumstances, relationships, jobs, living situations was I in? And just trying to connect those. And then also, I love numerology for map making, which is that practice, where am I in space and time? But also, like, I'm about to do a batch of readings called Halfway Helpful. It's just 30 minutes. It's in the month of June. You can book now through my shop and through my website. And we're going to look at the where you are now and say, what did the first half of the year look like? What did you get done? What didn't you get done? What's the hopes and dreams for the next half? And how can we use numerology to figure out how to, because we're always cycling through these numbers. So, like, where in the cycle are you? And exactly what you're talking about. How can we make this easier for you to show up for yourself, to achieve these goals? And what what do you already have at your disposal? Something that I heard you say in this last bit about what makes attainable spiritual goals was a lot of tools that are already kind of in the witch's toolbox. Like, we have our tarot cards that we can use. We know our planetary rulers on our days of the week. We know our number energies and how to align our energies. Like, we already know how to do that. So now it might not even be doing anything differently per se, but just shifting the focus to, again, effectiveness and saying, what do we already know? What are the resources we already have at our disposal? And how can we just use them in a way that supports our overall progress and growth and achievement? And I think Meg actually just said something in our June forecast that was about putting together a draft with the assets you already have. So this feels very much in alignment with, and I think I asked one of the questions that you asked in our June forecast as well, which was in times of challenge, how can you look back at times that you've overcome similar things in the past? What did you do then? And how maybe could you do that again and get a little closer to something now? So yeah, I love this. This conversation is like very much in the Coven soup.
This makes me think of, I may have just told you this off recording before, but when I like to have my tarot card of the year, and I remember many years ago, I was like, oh no, this next year is going to be the Tower card. It's going to be the Tower. What do I need to do to start preparing now? Like, I need to like have everything in order. Just like really like kind of like obsessing over it. And like, I remember talking to my therapist about it. Like, we had this whole process, and like, it was like really kind of like gripping tightly. And then I like redid the math, and it was like, not the Tower at all. It was like, I don't know, the Hangman or something like that. Like, and I was like, had so obsessively stressed about this thing that wasn't going to happen for like another 8 years or something for me. And it's just like funny to think about that too, where like I'll somehow have like do a good job at like having the perfect year, like I needed to release to like let go. So I just think that's a funny story of me trying to be like, I will control this so much if I do everything perfectly now. And like, I probably like lost a lot of days to stress in that like,
Yeah.
lead up year that wasn't even really a lead up year. It was definitely a lesson in there for me.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Well, and that's the input as well. Like that's all part of it. You're spending time and energy on that goal, whether it's today or 8 years from now. But you said release, and I think that's something we haven't talked about. We've talked about setting goals, we've talked about checking in on goals, providing a lot of flexibility, but also some helpful structure in terms of getting you to that end result, the desired end result. What happens maybe in your client work or just in your ethos? Like what happens when you have to release a goal, when you don't meet the goal? Like what does that process look like? Or if the spell doesn't come to fruition in ways that you wanted?
Yeah, I think this probably happens a lot more frequently than we think or we share with one another. And like, I mean, it makes me like in productivity, and folks have probably heard of this, but like this like sunk cost fallacy, we can really push ourselves to continue doing something. It also makes me think too around like, do we have, what is our expectation of what an end goal should look like? And like, does it truly need to be that awesome? Like, how can we achieve, like, I often think about this with clients where I'm like, who is going to be evaluating this thing that you're writing and doing? And like, what will be their criteria of what is good enough? Like, you have limited time and energy. You don't need to overdo it. Like, what would it look, what are some ways that if you like are writing your draft to your advisor and you're like feeling stumped and stuck, instead of like spending literally an hour on it, like write a little comment to them to be like, I'm really not sure what to do in this section. Or like, I'm thinking about doing this, like, what do you think? Or something. Like, are there ways to not have to have like a perfect output so that you can do good enough to achieve whatever you need to achieve? So I think about that in terms of like, if you don't if you're like having trouble completing something that you want to complete, like this is the hacking productivity. This is the like, how good does it really need to be, and in order for you to achieve the goal that you want to do. And it also too brings up like a feeling of like, I know for me as someone who's chronically ill and has chronic pain, like there's a grief in needing to let certain things go sometimes. Like when I was in grad, I wanted to be a professor for like decades. And then when I finally was like, I don't think my body and mind can have a 60-hour work week, which is what I was seeing colleagues having like pre-tenure. And like there was like some grief in letting that go, even though it was like I'm excited to have my own job now. You know, I'm delighted. Like, you know, there it can be real sadness and grief in saying like I don't want to do that or I can't do that. Like I've had this in the past with like I really wanted to write like a book project or a book about productivity years ago, and then ended up being like, does the world need another book by like a middle class white lady talking about productivity? Like I'd rather be reading voices of other people writing about that. So like I don't know. There's many reasons why we might decide to not do something, and I'm curious from the psych perspective around that letting go, because I know for me like letting go of projects, while it can be something that will actually support my physical and mental and like psychological body, my relationships, and align with my values and ethics, it still can, I still can feel very sad to like let go of a goal that I
Yeah.
had wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that we hold the whole, and
Yeah.
like that's my life experience talking and my kind of spiritual perspective, but also my theoretical orientation is looking more and more like existential humanistic psychology, and we just practice radical acceptance. The presence of grief does not negate the choice that was made. It doesn't mean that you made the wrong choice. You can, and that's kind of the paradox of life. You can make the right choice and you can still feel grief over having to make the decision at all, or the circumstances that led to that being the right decision. In terms of chronic illness, it's not like we're choosing that. It's okay, this is not possible anymore. And so now shifting into a version of now what, that's also something I said in the June forecast. So we're right on the money this month for June energy, but looking at, now what, but also what's now possible. And again, centering things like effectiveness to say, where do I go from here? But in terms of the grief, I think it's just acceptance and holding it and not being afraid to show up for it and to feel it so that it can be processed and that you can move through it. Because then again, it could just become something that's holding you back from actually being effective and achieving future goals. I don't
This
know if
makes
there
me
is a right answer.
no, I don't think there is. Like it makes me think, like I think of this when I'm working with professors who are like constantly being asked to be on committees and to do this, and you have to do service and you have to have
Mm.
advisees and stuff, where it's like this might sound corny, but it's like when you say yes to this, you're saying no to yourself.
Hmm.
Or like literally like we'll like work with clients to be like, what are the criterias that something has to hit for you to say yes? And if it doesn't hit these, then that's a no. And like the why, like the wisdom of having this conversation with someone and like through your like wise present mind, like then like can provide a little bit more, I don't know, strength in doing that. And I say this for myself as well. When I think of the like criteria for when I want to say yes to something or say no to something, or like maybe this is around like setting boundaries or like the pricing of my work, or, you know, like there's many things that can come up around that. But yeah, especially when it's like a compliment to be asked to do something.
Yeah.
Like it can be really delightful, and then often like I can witness folks or myself be like, "Uh-oh, I signed up for too much." And then like do you need to say no to things? That is a conversation I also have with folks where it's like,
Mm.
is there anything you signed up for that you need to back out of? And like that could be a bummer, but also like that could help you to prioritize the goals that you truly that are the most important goals for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and witches know how to release things too. That's the
Yeah.
nice things. You just you can burn it, you can freeze it. It's like what are the tools at your disposal to help you along that process? But yeah, the I think that dialogue is really helpful. So if you even can phone a friend, call your coven, and chat things out, I think, yeah, having that wise counsel or even that reflective practice of this is what I'm hearing you say, and this is what I've heard you say is important to you, and this is what I'm hearing this opportunity to be or not to be, and going
Oh
from
yeah.
there.
I need that with all the Libra in my chart. I am like I need a pro and con list. Like I need a wise friend who knows me well to like help because decision making on its own can be, I don't want to sell myself short, but it really is.
Yeah.
Making decisions sucks. I don't like it. I like for there to be two choices, like
Okay.
not a billion choices, or to just like, I think this is why I love having so many Capricorns and Virgos and Aries in my life because I'm like, you choose. You want to choose anyways. Just go ahead and choose. I'll do whatever.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Oh, well, this has been so great. Before I let you go, I do have one thought about obsessions, but is there anything that we haven't talked about in terms of your work or spirituality or dot, dot, dot that you want to give voice to before we wrap up?
Not not anything that wouldn't open up a whole other conversation. Like
Okay,
I'm
no.
thinking, I mean, like I'm thinking right now, like the book that I'm working on and writing is about someone who was also very witchy. I would not be surprised if she was a witch, So I'm like, this is not productivity, but I have been thinking about like what it means to be writing biographies when you love someone so
Mm.
much. So like that's really not related to this. But if folks want to talk about that from the Coven, like if you're also writing a biography about someone you're obsessed with, like happy to chat about it.
Oh my gosh, yes, get at Dr. Kate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I do have something about obsessions, so maybe
Yeah.
we just go there. I guess this is kind of a question, but I've been thinking about we started by talking about things that kind of just take over, right? It's either something you're obsessed with or even something like the Odyssey where you found out about it and then it took over. And I think that in addition to brain fog being a buzzy word of the last couple of years, I think about another phrase, brain rot, also being a buzzy word. And I'm just curious, like, in your work, have you bumped up against like any tension between like an obsessive mind and person and having to like quiet that down in order to be productive? I don't know. Do you know where I'm going here?
I think so. I mean, like what comes up to my mind from the productivity perspective is like revenge bedtime procrastination. Like, yeah, like so like not necessarily brain rot, but like a lot of folks like will talk about like, oh, I'm just scrolling on my phone at night, and it's like, well, of course you are. Like you finally have time to yourself, and I'm saying this in like where often it's expressed in a negative
Hmm.
perspective, like but like I myself in the past have thought about like, oh, should I just totally get rid of Instagram? And I'm like, I want to read my little comics. I want to watch my heated rivalry memes and Phoebe Bridgers, hot takes and like whatever, like I want to do this stuff and like it can be fun, but yeah, like in terms of brain rotting, it makes me think of like it can be fun to do. I think that maybe we give ourselves a little bit where there's like a little bit too much moralizing about it.
Mm.
And also, I think that like I'm thinking of like if my brain is rotting just with scrolling Instagram, like of course it is. It's like Instagram has been made by like brilliant fucking psychologists who like make slot machines,
Yeah.
and maybe not psychologists, but like marketing experts and stuff. So I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah. So I don't know. Like my thought is like, is there like harm reductionist brain rot?
Mm.
Like that's what comes up to think about that. I
Yeah.
don't know. And also like I don't know. I'm not here to be like reclaim brain rot. Like you can brain rot if you want to. It's your choice. Like
No,
that's kind of like how I feel. Yeah.
yeah, I think maybe the harm reduction is in the self-shaming that we do. Like if it is really getting in the way, there are ways that you can set screen timers or lock your phone in a box or, whatever your version of that is. But that, yeah, maybe this is productivity culture, toxic productivity culture, even at work in my question of like, how can you spend less time doing things that maybe actually you enjoy and more time getting to work?
Yeah, this is tough. I mean, so things that come to my mind in terms of like if it is something that you're like, this is interrupting my work, like what can I do? Gamification can be helpful for folks. So like I'm thinking about this in terms of like if it's challenging to get started on a task, to say like, okay, I'm going to like, for example, set a Pomodoro timer. A Pomodoro timer is an example of a pulse and pause. So you pulse, you have a focused work session where you're monotasking on one thing, and then you pause, you take a little break. Maybe your pause is when you get to check your phone, something like that. But the idea there is that you're like, okay, I just have 25 minutes or 10 minutes or 5 minutes or 90 minutes, and I'm just going to do this work session. And like the gamification is that you're like, okay, this is a unit I have completed. Check. I'm doing this thing. Or you like race to see how quickly you can complete something. That I think can be helpful. Also, accountability, like body doubling, you have avoidance alley. So like being able to like body double around someone, even if they're not doing the same task as you are, can like create accountability to say, I'm going to do this thing, and then to say, how did it go? So again, maybe the moral there doesn't need to be moralizing there. You can say,
Yeah.
I tried. I did it for 5 minutes and then I did this, but like body doubling and, co-working can be something that can be helpful as well to have the accountability for that. I have the brick app, like the little like object that I'm like, no Instagram. It's really just for Instagram and the news. That's like, I paid all this money to have the thing so I can't access Instagram during certain days or certain times of the day when I do have to get work done. Usually it's fine if I want to scroll for an hour throughout the day about Phoebe Bridgers or Shane and Ilya or something, but like that or like internet blockers or things
Yeah.
can be helpful sometimes as well. Because I'm just as addicted to my screen as everybody else is.
Yeah.
So, but yes, so I would say body doubling, maybe gamification to see how much you can complete in a set amount of time, measuring by time spent. Those things could be helpful for jump starting productivity if you feel like you're, you know, stuck in a loop of not being productive.
Yeah. Okay, well, this is making me think that I want all the witches listening to get into the comments and start thinking about how we're going to gamify magical spells even more than they already are. Dr. Kate, this has been delightful. I just love you so much. I think you're so brilliant, and that the work that you're doing in the world is so special and is really meeting a need in this cultural moment of really oppressive systems still being the dominant structures, but then they are shifting kind of. But, I really believe in being specific and personal and unique, and I just appreciate your work.
Thank you, B. This has been really fun. I'm glad that we could chat today.
Me too. Thanks so much.